also want loyalists of the former government to go, and that includes the man who was Prime Minister, Mohamed Ghannouchi. James Bays with more from Tunis.
There are thousands of people here. It's estimated this is the biggest protest in Tunisia since Ben Ali was forced to flee from this country. People here say that the protests have moved to other countries, the protests that were first started here in Tunisia, and in some ways they feel that this country has been forgotten. They say their revolution is an unfinished one.
We are here because we believe that the dictator has gone, but dictatorship is still here. The system of dictatorship is still ruling right now.
If Ghannouchi is still here, because that means Ben Ali is here also. We are all way again in injustice. We are suffering again because Ghannouchi is the same like Ben Ali.
You got rid of Ben Ali. Tell me why you are still protesting.
Because the system is the same. Nothing has changed. The dictator is gone, but dictatorship is still here.
It's now some 6 weeks since Ben Ali was forced to leave this country. The protests after he left were relatively small, people unhappy with the Prime Minister Ghannouchi. Well, now those protests are growing again. This is the largest protest in Tunisia since the fall of Ben Ali, and it shows you that even though the world's attention is now on Libya, in some of those countries that have already had revolution, things are far from over. James Bays, AlJazeera, Tunis.
So Tunisia, Jordan, we saw before it, part of a day of many protests around the Middle East.
Every Libyan individual and every Libyan tribe will be armed, so Libya will turn into a burning hell.
This was the big one about almost 2 hours ago, I guess, a threat from Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi, who made an unexpected appearance in Green Square earlier. Pro-Gaddafi militia fired on protesters calling for him to go. Down to Iraq, where several protesters died in clashes with security forces during a day of rage over lack of food, water, electricity and jobs. Basra's governor's already resigned in response to those protests. Egypt, where of course they already kicked out their president, but now tens of thousands of Egyptians are rallying again. They're keeping up the pressure on their military rulers to carry out the reforms that they promised. And Friday prayers again turned into mass protest in Yemen, where pro- and anti-government groups held rival rallies. One protester was killed. That happened in the southern city of Aden. Let's look at some other news of the day from around the world. The search for survivors from New Zealand's earthquake has entered a 5th day. At least 113 people are confirmed dead in the country's second largest city, Christchurch. Rescue teams continue the search for the more than 200 people still missing. Andrew Thomas is in Lyttelton in the South Island, just outside of Christchurch.
The epicentre. It was almost directly underneath Lyttelton that Tuesday's earthquake hit. Damage everywhere. Even graves of the dead weren't spared. In town, this outdoor deck destroyed by a falling chimney. It nearly destroyed much more.
Huge, just going straight down. So it was 3 seconds at the most that it missed me, nothing.
In Christchurch, rescue operations continue, today concentrated on the cathedral. But hope of finding more survivors has all but vanished. The number of bodies in the mortuary is the only figure going up. The central business district is still cordoned off. Demolition will take down much of what the quake left behind. Commercial life will have to relocate for months. There's talk of establishing a temporary CBD elsewhere. In the suburbs, destruction too, and pile upon pile of mud which bubbled up when the quake hit. Here, though, most property can be cleaned up, even if it takes a volunteer army to do it.
So we were just driving past and noticed that she was all by herself, so I thought we'd give her a hand.
Logistical challenges demand creative solutions. Power remains down for 20% of Christchurch, and some towns are cut from the grid entirely. All 4 underground cables to one town are damaged beyond repair. The power company will build a 3-kilometre overhead line to replace them, an 8-week job they're promising to have done in 1. No one is suggesting that Christchurch or its surrounding towns could or should be rebuilt exactly as they were. The damage is simply too great for that. Instead, what's being talked about here is a new post-2011 version of what was here before. A reconstruction aiming towards that has, very tentatively, now begun. Andrew Thomas, Al Jazeera, Littleton.
The trial of an American CIA contractor accused of killing 2 men in Pakistan has been postponed until March 3rd. Security was tight at the prison in Lahore where Raymond Davis is being held and where the hearing took place. If convicted, Davis faces the death penalty, but Washington insists he has diplomatic immunity and therefore should be released. To Ireland now, where elections are taking place that could signal the end of the government there. Back to Stephen Cole in London for more on that one. Hi, Stephen.
That's more than likely, Kamal. You're right. The elections come as the Irish voters are angry at the collapse of the economy. It leaves the government bracing itself for a heavy defeat at the polls. Fianna Fáil has dominated Irish politics for almost 80 years, but public service cuts, higher taxes and now soaring unemployment have left voters, the people, very disillusioned. From Dublin, here's Rory Challens.
After the bust, the chance for people to vent their anger. Ireland started its voting early and a high turnout is expected. That's a sign the Irish might punish their leaders.
I would have voted for the current government not to be in power, and for the specific reasons that they've just made so many bad decisions over the last, well, in my opinion, 5 or 6 years.
I actually went independent for my first choice. Why? I mean, everyone's kind of saying that Fine Gael are going to make a change, but I don't really feel that they are. It's pretty much the same.
The polls are all pointing to an election meltdown for the ruling Fianna Fáil party, so long the dominant force in Irish politics.
The party was founded in 1926, and since it first came into government in 1932, it has dominated political affairs in this state. And even when it has been out of government, the least number of seats it has had, it's never fallen below 60 seats. And often it has been above 70, and on a few occasions it has been above 80. So this represents a collapse for Fianna Fáil, and it will take them a generation, a political generation at the very least, before they can repair it.
Fianna Fáil took Ireland into the good times, but crucially they were in power when the dream went bad.
A banking bust, a $115 billion bailout, and years of austerity measures ahead do not make for a happy voter. All the main parties have promised they'll renegotiate the terms of the country's humiliating loans, but it's doubtful there's much room for manoeuvre.
The real masters of Ireland now live over the sea in Europe and New York. Whoever wins this election has a tough job on their hands. Rory Challens, Al Jazeera, Dublin.
The French fashion house designer Christian Dior has suspended its creative director John Galliano after he was accused of assault. Galliano allegedly made anti-Semitic remarks and slapped a couple at a bar in Paris. Police say he was drunk at the time and detained temporarily. The British designer has been the head of Christian Dior for 14 years and was set to kick off Paris Fashion Week on Monday. On that sartorial note, let's go back to Kamal in Doha.
Stephen, thank you for that. Earlier in the evening we heard a speech from Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan leader, a surprise speech. Yesterday we caught word of an interview, I should say, from Saif al-Islam, who is the son of Muammar Gaddafi. That interview has been released now. It was recorded by Turkish television. Have a look.
Leave the Libya one day to another country.
Yes, we have plan A, plan B, plan C. Plan A is to live and die in Libya. Plan B is to live and die in Libya. Plan C is to live and die in Libya.
Big difficulties for the world, not for Libya only.
We don't destroy the oil. The oil is for the Libyans. We don't kill our people because of our people. But we will never, ever let our people walk alone in this dark time. Never, ever. We are now united, all of us, and we will fight to the end. And we will get rid of those terrorists.
to leave the Libya.
We'll take a break from the news just for now. Have a look at the sports with Rahul. For once, I don't want to know about New Zealand cricket.
Okay,
I want to know about Bangladesh and Ireland, please.
Well, in about 20 seconds' time, put your hand over the ear, OK? Co-host Bangladesh have recorded their first victory of this Cricket World Cup. They beat Ireland in a low-scoring but incredibly tense match in Mirpur in Dhaka after choosing to bat first. Tamim Iqbal got the home side off to a rollicking start in this Group B clash, but after he was dismissed for 44, the Bangladesh batsmen really struggled on the very slow pitch and accurate Irish bowling. They were eventually dismissed for 205. Well, the Irish started cautiously, but crucially, they kept losing wickets at regular intervals. Kevin O'Brien did keep things interesting with an innings of 37, that's 6, one of the highlights of his innings. But then Shaful Islam took a match-winning 4 for 21 to help bowl Ireland out for 178, giving the home side victory by 27 runs. Great scenes in Dhaka, but much more sombre scenes in Nagpur. In the early match between Australia and New Zealand, there was a minute's silence for the victims of the Christchurch earthquake. New Zealand's players could be forgiven for having other things on their minds. Their batsmen certainly couldn't cope with Australia's quicks as they were reduced to 73 for 6. 50 from Nathan McCullum helped the Kiwis achieve a modest 206 all-out in their innings. Well, the Aussie openers had little trouble in the beginning of their innings. Watson and Haddin put 133 for the first wicket. The world champions reaching their target for the loss of just 3 wickets and 16 overs to spare. They've now gone unbeaten for an incredible 31 World Cup matches. Their last defeat way back in 1999. Australian Open champion Novak Djokovic has reached the Dubai Tennis Championships final for the 3rd successive year after beating the 3rd seed Thomas Berdych in the semi-finals on Friday. But this was by no means a routine win. Berdych taking the first set in this one on a tie-break. Well, Djokovic did come back in the match in the second set, 6-2 to level the match. And then in the decider, tragedy for Berdych. Djokovic was leading 4-2, but the Czech was forced to retire when he was hampered by a thigh injury in the closing stages. Djokovic will now play either the top seed and 4-time former champion Roger Federer or the unseeded Richard Gasquet in Saturday's final. Football and English Premier League leaders Manchester United have again been forced to deny that they're about to be bought up by representatives for the Qatari royal family. Reports in a British newspaper link Qatar Holdings, the same company that owns the Harrods department store, with a bid of $2.4 billion for the club. But the 18-time league champions have said the Glazer family remain fully committed to their long-term ownership of United, having bought it back in 2005. Well, former United star David Beckham